Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's December 8, 2020, and this is episode 726. Today, it's my pleasure to bring you an inspiring interview with a talented globe-trotting photographer, Adam Taylor. Adam shares his story with us, including early entrepreneurial tendencies and how he initially got started in BMX and action sports photography, then transitioned to fitness photography in the same geographical market. He then switched to real estate, which he transitioned to design and architecture photography in the same geographical market again, but with greatly reduced travel requirements. With COVID having dampened his dream plans to move with his family to Bali earlier this year, he has recently moved to Hawaii, where he now faces developing a brand new client base while sticking with his now familiar design and architecture photography. Adam has also created a substantial online course called Learn to License Your Photos, which he shares the details of during our conversation, and he kindly provided a 25% discount for any of my listeners or readers, and you can claim that discount by entering the code MARTIN during checkout. And I'll put links to that and the images and other things that we talk about during our conversation into the blog post for this week at mbp.ac/726. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Adam Taylor. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate you. I'm excited to be here and talk to you.
I've been looking forward to this. You dropped me a line a few days ago. I've been checking out your work. Obviously got lots of great stuff to talk about, and your entrepreneurship and all of the various aspects of your business. So I'm looking forward to jumping into this.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Adam.
Yeah, start kind of back in the beginning. I grew up in a real small town right outside New Orleans, Louisiana. And at an early age, I fell in love with BMX bike riding. And around the same time, at an early age, I fell in love with photography. So on fifth grade family vacation to New York City, I'm standing there at the base of the Statue of Liberty with my mom's point and shoot camera. I'm snapping pictures of the Lady Liberty. I'm snapping pictures of the skyline across the harbor. And I'm just thinking, like, man, this is the coolest thing in the world. I want to be a photographer when I grow up. And keep in mind, I'm in fifth grade at this point. But fast forward, and I get to high school, and they have the yearbook class. And so I'm walking around taking pictures at the school, and then I get to go back and put the pictures into a layout and make a book out of it. And that was really cool. And so at that point, I thought, well, if I could take pictures and layout pages for a BMX magazine, then that would combine my two interests, and that would be the coolest job in the world. So I set my sights on this big lofty goal. I was going to work at the leading BMX magazine in the world, Ride BMX Magazine. So I told everybody when I graduated high school, I'm going to go to college for graphic design as a backup plan. And then when I graduate, I'm going to move to Southern California and do whatever it takes to work at the BMX magazine. Well, little did I know at the time that the designer and the photographer of a magazine, unlike in the yearbook staff at school, is two different jobs. And the photographer gets to travel all around the world and do cool stuff, and the designer sits at a desk all day. So while I was in college, I shifted my focus and began focusing more on photography. And through a lot of hard work and focus, make a long story short, a month before I graduated college, I got a call from the editor of that magazine to see if I wanted to interview for a job position at the magazine.
Oh, brilliant.
So I literally got my dream job right out of college, moved from small town Louisiana to Southern California. I worked in the BMX industry for about 8 years, 5.5 of those years at the magazine, and then I left to pursue freelance work. As you mentioned, I kind of have an entrepreneurial mindset, and I just didn't make a great employee. You know, I was good at what I did, but I wasn't a great employee. So I worked in action sports for a while longer, and then shifted into fitness photography as my passions kind of shifted and changed, and then eventually kind of pivoted into real estate photography, which transitioned into what I'm doing now, which is interior and architecture photography. So currently I work with interior designers, custom home builders, and architects, and do more high-end interiors and architecture photography.
Excellent. It's a great story. I love the fact that you jumped into your dream job sort of straight at, well, just before you got out of college. So
Yeah.
for me, raised in England, I'm not so confident with the sort of the fifth grade thing. How old is that
Yes.
roughly? Like 10 years
Okay.
old or so?
Yeah, it must have been probably, yeah, around 9 or 10 years old, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, I just had this little point and shoot camera that my mom let me borrow of hers while we were on vacation, and I must have taken like 15 rolls of film, and I was so excited to get home and develop the film. We sent it out to some lab in the mail, and the mail came back, and here I am like cutting with scissors to like crop the images to make a better crop and everything.
Oh, brilliant.
I just loved it, and I loved sharing the pictures with people afterwards.
Yeah. I completely understand it. That's very similar. I was probably 11 years old or so when I was on a holiday with a friend's parents and my friend, of course. And we were out doing landscape stuff and that. And my friend's dad had an old Russian camera, Zenit, I think it was, an SLR camera. And he said, "Do you want to come and help me with this?" And I was messing around and he'd let me release the shutter a few times. And it's those early things that really that feed you into it. So I can totally relate to it.
Yeah, and I have to give credit to my mom and say thank you to her because, she kind of just let me take it. She could have stopped me and said, "No, you're wasting the film. I don't want to pay for all this film or whatever." Or she could have said, "This is a brand new camera. I don't want you to break it." But she totally gave me the freedom. And I actually remember it was one of these Kodak cameras that back in the day, they had 3 different settings of like, wide, medium, and panoramic or whatever. So you can kind of change the width of it based on the film. And so, yeah, she just let me go with it. And I took way more photos than I probably should have, but it helped shape me into the person I am today.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you did your BMX work. You say you weren't such a good employee. Was that because you'd got your mind was elsewhere? You were already starting to think of the next thing?
I think so. Yeah, I'm definitely very goal oriented. That's a good question. I set my sights on that goal, and once I had it, it was kind of like, okay, well, what's the next goal? And the other part of it was that, as part of my job, I was being sent all around the world to shoot photos and make videos of professional BMX riders. And most of these guys didn't have quote unquote regular jobs. And so I was having a blast going out and shooting with them and hanging out with them at the skate parks and the street spots and at the competitions. But after all that was over, I would go to my room and edit all night and grind all night and, be making blog posts, and they were going and hanging out. And after the trip was over, they were going back home to hang out some more, and I was going back to an office. And so I kind of got a taste of this like free-spirited lifestyle, living alongside these professional athletes. And so once I got a taste of that kind of freedom, I wanted more of it. And I saw how these other guys were living, and I just wanted that. And so I think that was part of it. And then also, just being entrepreneurial. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't make a lot of money. And so that was part of it too, is that, because I wasn't making a lot of money, I was having to find other side hustles and other ways to, increase my income. And one of those things that I did, it's kind of a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, is I began to license some of my BMX photos to other companies. In addition to using them on the website that I needed them for, I was able to sell them to BMX rider sponsors and things like that.
And you were doing that from when you were photographing at school, basically, trying to figure out other things that you could do with your images as you were shooting them.
Yeah, well, once I got a job at the magazine and started shooting with professional riders and everything, a big part of what I did was cover competitions. So I would go to big events like X Games or these big international competitions. And at the competition, you would come home with, a couple thousand photographs of the world's top athletes. At the time, we weren't really publishing them in the printed magazine. That was reserved for different editorial features. So a lot of these images were just going on the website. And so we would make a gallery of 30 or 40 photos from the competition. And, we'd save a few of the photos to do an interview with a guy later down the line. But then there were still hundreds, if not thousands of photos on my hard drive from these competitions that were decent or usable images, some of them even good images. And what would happen is that rider sponsors, their energy drink companies, their clothing companies, their bike companies, their shoe companies that they rode for would reach out to me because they knew that I was at the competitions, and they would say, "Hey, do you have a photo of XYZ rider from this competition? He got a silver medal. We'd love to do an ad in a magazine with him." And so I was able to sell my photos that way. And then I kind of got the foresight to, start offering people photos before the competition even happened. So, not only were companies reaching out to me after the competition, and then I started reaching out to other companies after the competition. So, after the event was over, I would reach out to Monster Energy Drink and say, hey, I've got photos of these riders that were at this event. Do you need any of them? And, send them some samples and stuff. And then I started getting the insight to offer photos before the competition even happened. So I would build relationships with these companies, like, for instance, Monster Energy Drink, Fox Clothing, an apparel company. And I would reach out to my contact there and say, hey, I'm going to be at this competition in whatever country. I know a handful of your riders are going to be there. If you agree to pay me X amount of dollars, I'll give you, 5 photos each day of the competition weekend, or I'll give you a gallery of 20 photos after the competition's over, or whatever it might have been. And so I started to kind of, hustle as what you can call it. And to come full circle, that's part of why I didn't make such a great employee. Is I got to the point where I was hustling so much that, as you can imagine, my boss wasn't super excited about it towards the end there. It was one of these things where everybody kind of did it in the industry. Anybody that worked at the magazine did it throughout the years. But I think I just did it a little bit less quietly and maybe a little more aggressively than other people. But, like I said, I didn't have a big salary. I was trying to make a living. I lived in Southern California, which is a very expensive place to live. And I was trying to, reach my other goals of, being able to buy a house and support a family and all these kind of things. So I had to find ways to make more money.
Yeah. I think it's great. And so, that yearning to be a free spirit, which, we fast forward a few years and you tell me you've just moved to Hawaii and, that's in search of another dream, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so to go back a little bit, we're recording this in end of November 2020. In March of this year, March 29th to be exact, I had a one-way ticket for myself and my wife and my 3-year-old daughter. We had a one-way ticket to Bali, Indonesia. We were going to go there for a year and quote unquote take a year off, but at the same time, sort of pursue online income and things like that. But basically just go there to live a dream. We had these words written on our vision board. We had these dreams kind of played out on paper that we wanted to live. And, we wanted a house on the beach. We wanted to be able to snorkel and free dive in our backyard. We wanted a rooftop gym to work out at. And, we had all these lifestyle goals that we wanted. And as we looked at them every night before we went to bed, we realized these aren't going to happen in Long Beach, California. So where do we need to go to make these happen? How long do we need to wait and work to make these happen? And at a certain point, it was like, well, can we make them happen now? And we were big fans of Bali. We had traveled there several times. One time on our honeymoon, we spent like 3.5 weeks there. And then, another vacation, we did 4 weeks. And then last year, as we were making decisions and plans to move there, we spent 5 weeks there. And we decided, let's go for a year. So we had a one-way flight to Bali to live out this dream on March 29th. And as you know, COVID hit early March. California, where we lived at the time, shut down everything March 19th. So just like 10 days before our flight was due to leave. And then Bali closed borders to international people like 5 days before our flight was due. So at this point, we had already, downsized. We had donated and purged and gotten rid of a ton of things and sold things. We had, gotten rid of half our furniture. Luckily, we had our condo set up for lease and we had our car for sale, but neither one of them had gone by that time. So luckily we still had a place to stay and we still had our car, which was a blessing in disguise. But, we had put so much time and energy and resources into making this move to live out our dreams that we really were crushed. We were devastated. And obviously many people during the COVID pandemic had it much worse than we did. But, again, we had put a lot into this and we're very let down. And so all throughout 2020, we were living almost like we felt like our life was on pause. Eventually we, bought some new furniture to replace the stuff we had sold. And eventually I started shooting again and servicing my clients there. But at the same time, like our mind and our heart seemed like we were already out of California. We were kind of living with one foot out the door, so to speak. And at a certain point, we just kept waiting for Bali to open their borders, hoping we could get back to that house that we had, put a lease agreement in place for. And it just wasn't happening. Bali wasn't opening their borders. And so we said, okay, where else will give us the same type of lifestyle that we desire? And in America, Hawaii is kind of the closest vibe you can get. It's a tropical paradise. It's an island. You've got, snorkeling and free diving. You've got hikes to waterfalls and, warm tropical weather all year round. And And so we decided, you know what, let's move. And literally, we made that decision. And 2 months later, we were here,
Brilliant.
which was crazy. We left behind, obviously friends and a network there and all of my clients. And so it was a very big, crazy decision. But because we had already done the logistics work of, about to move, and B, mentally, we were so prepared to move earlier in the year. We were able to put everything into motion very quickly and take the plunge. So currently we're in Oahu, Hawaii. And as I'm talking to you, we're in an Airbnb. We're switching to a new one tomorrow that we'll stay at for a month. And then starting January 1st, we'll have, found a more long-term place to lease out and start living out here.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on getting closer to your sort of final goal. And well, it may not be. It won't be your final goal. We both know that, right? You'll live there for a while, and then something else will ignite a spark, and you'll start to think about everything else. But it's great that you're getting to the point where you're able to actually get out and do the things that you're dreaming of doing. And I think it's so you've moved over to Hawaii. You've got. Is it from an American's perspective? Is it easy for you because it's the same country? Is it easy for you to move over there, or is there lots of red tape or anything?
There was a little bit of issues, only due to COVID and due to our dog.
Okay.
So because it's an island, bringing a pet to the island is a little bit challenging. So it's just a lot of steps that involve a fair amount of money. Total ended up costing probably about $1,000 before it was all said and done. And there's just a lot of steps you have to take as far as making appointments with your vet, filling out paperwork, sending things overnight to a lab and into Hawaii and all these things. And so there was, some red tape with the dog, and then just COVID stuff. We had to, send things over ahead of time to say that we were coming, and then we had to take a COVID test and get negative results before we arrived. But as far as everything else, if it wasn't for the dog and it wasn't for COVID, it'd be just a flight and starting to pay rent over here or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So you'd built this customer base, you'd got all of your clients and everything, you'd got a successful business, and you dropped all of that. You're starting again now, and this is the third time you're doing it. Yeah. So
So originally I left the BMX industry and started doing fitness photos, which was kind of starting all over and a whole beast there. And then I left that to do real estate, which turned into what I'm doing now, which was kind of starting all over again. And then now, moving to Hawaii, I'm not changing industries as far as the type of photos that I'm doing. But it's, like you said, a whole new client base. And so one of my kind of takeaways that I'd like people to get away from this is that you can start over, if you have a clear direction in mind, just like I had a clear direction if I wanted to work for BMX Magazine and went after that goal. Just like I decided I wanted to go from BMX to fitness and from fitness to real estate. If you have a direction of where you want to go, you can make it happen. And so, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I've already built an amazing business here in Hawaii. I've only been here 17 days. But I've got a plan in place. I know the direction I want to go. I know the clients that I want to serve. And one of my big kind of success tips that I would like to give to people is, effective emails. And so when I started doing real estate, when I started doing interiors and architecture, my email campaigns were very successful. And I knew that I could kind of rely on that to give me a little jump start. And so 6 days ago now, as we're talking, I sent out my first email to clients here or potential clients here in Hawaii. And I've had one in-person meeting, one Zoom meeting so far, and I've got 2 more scheduled.
Oh, brilliant.
So things are going really well. And again, I want to give actionable takeaways to your listeners. So in order to find the clients that I reached out to here, what I did was I went to a virtual assistant. These are overseas people that you can pay relatively low wages compared to U.S. fees anyway, in order to get information or do tasks for you. So I hired a virtual assistant to do data mining. So essentially I told them I want every single custom home builder, every single architect, and every single interior designer on the island of Oahu. I want to know their company name, their company website, and their email address. And I paid a relatively low fee. It was $125.
Wow.
And they got every single one on the island. Unfortunately, for that same price, where I was able to get 1,000 contacts in Los Angeles County, where I previously lived, I was only able to get 360 here on the island because it's just a much smaller geographic region with a lot less people. But it was super helpful. It was well worth the money. And then from those emails, I put them into a MailChimp campaign. and I have, a series of emails that I can send out to people. And because I've done it with, different groups of people over the years, I kind of have emails that are already built up, and I just have to change the wording and change a few things to make it relevant to the clients here in Oahu. And my first email I would love to share with you guys, because I know people struggle with, how to cold reach people and how to get somebody's attention when they don't know who you are and stuff, which can be very difficult.
Yeah.
And so my strategy for this is, keep it super short and sweet. People that are getting pitched to get these kind of things all the time. And so if they can decide if they want to proceed to read it within, 2 seconds, then you've got them. So you got to keep it short and sweet. If they see a giant email, they're automatically going to think this is going to take too long. I don't have time to digest this. You might get pushed to the bottom of their inbox. They might just click delete right away. So you want it super short so that they know, looking at it from a glance, that it's only going to take them a few seconds to read. And then from there, you introduce yourself. You tell them why you're messaging, and you kind of explain that you would like to work with them. And so essentially, without reading it word for word, my email to potential new clients is something like this. Hey, I know you're busy, so I'm going to keep this brief, which is exactly how I reached out to you when I contacted you. And then let them know who I am. My name is Adam. I'm an interior and architecture photographer. I just moved here to the island. If you have any projects you'd like photos of, I would love to work with you and talk to you more about how you run your business and about my process. And if you don't, then no problem. Please enjoy these photos of super cute dogs. And then I attached 5 photos that I shot of interior spaces that have dogs in the shots. This is, obviously friendly and inviting, and everybody loves dogs. And it's just a good kind of easy icebreaker. And they know right away that I'm respecting their time, that, they know exactly who I am and what I'm after, because I've already told them what kind of photography I do and that I just moved here and that I would love to work with them. And then just a couple photos to show them that, hey, I do quality work. And then, of course, if they want to see more, they can click on my website and Instagram. And the success rate from that style of email has been super effective for me. And so I think other photographers can kind of take that and, deconstruct a little bit and, make something that is fitting for their specific industry, whether it's, interiors with dogs or, lifestyle photos with some kind of theme to it that, resonates with their viewers and their potential client base.
You've just described exactly what I did a few days ago when I got your email. I get a lot of email, people saying, "Oh, can we do an interview? Can we do this?" And I try to be as responsive as possible. You just walk through everything that I normally do. If it's too long or if there's too much work involved, then I'll leave it unread. And I don't get back to it for a few weeks, and then I think, this is probably too late now anyway. And so things happen, and I got your email, and it was like brief, really friendly, and I thought, oh, this guy sounds like is worth having a good chat with, and I could tell from that point that you're not only going to be good to talk with on a personable sort of level, but I could tell that you'd got the sort of the business acumen and all of the stuff that I would like to relay to my listeners. And so
yes.
I'm thinking, okay, great. I got straight back in touch with you, and here we are.
And I appreciate that. And to that point, knowing your target audience, knowing the person that you're reaching out to, and having an idea of what their mindset is like helps so much when you're trying to reach out to potential clients.
Yeah.
Like you said, if it gets pushed to the bottom of the inbox, gets pushed off for a few days, that's not where you want to be.
Right.
So these quick, short emails, like you said, super friendly. And what it does is that it shows them right off the bat that you're easy to work with and professional, which is really, at the end of the day, as a business person, in my field, I'm working with architects, designers. They want somebody that they can rely on, that they know is going to be easy to work with and professional.
Yeah. And it came across. It's great. So as you've got through, you've got to this point, you've started to reach out to clients, you're getting a few meetings set up. We both, I think, you probably more than me, but we're pretty confident things are going to go well. And you're going to build up a new client base for the third time. This is sort of off the top of my head. What do you think's going to, say in a year's time, where do you picture yourself being? And I know that as you say, you're very goal orientated. Yeah. Where do you picture yourself being in a year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because as goal oriented as I am, because of COVID and how everything's planned out this year, the goal this year was kind of like, just get to that next place, like just get to Bali or to Hawaii or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't fully written out my goals for next year per se, but, I love what I do. I love shooting interior spaces and, more of the high end stuff. So I really hope to have a couple of really key relationships in place with, like I said, interior designers, builders, and architects here on the island, because you don't need a lot of clients. You need a couple of really good clients. Back on the mainland in California, I had two retainer relationships that were really valuable, where, one company I worked with for 3 years, the other about a year, where I basically had a monthly salary, and, I was like their go-to photographer. And so as a freelancer, to have steady income, that's really valuable, especially when I have a family, especially in a new place like Hawaii, where, things are relatively uncertain at this point, and I don't have those clients built up yet. So I could see myself, building a relationship like that, where I have a retainer in place. But, right now, in this moment, because I just moved here and because things are so fresh, my sights are kind of set on sort of the medium term or the short term of like, okay, let's get into a really comfortable house, living situation that is going to allow us, myself and my wife, to be creative, to be energized and inspired and excited about the work that we do. A place that's conducive to us going on our, daily or weekly adventures to hiking and diving and everything like that. So yeah, and then on top of that, I really want to build up another aspect of my business, which is licensing. So, not only licensing my photos, which we can talk about, but also helping other photographers license their photos. So I act currently as kind of a licensing agent with a handful of photographers that are either too busy to do that into their business, or, maybe they just aren't that good at it, or they just don't like it and simply don't want to do it. So I'm helping other photographers sell their images. And so these are, for example, if a designer hires me or somebody else to shoot a kitchen, we can license the shot to the kitchen designer that designed the space, but then also we can take that same image and try to license it to the cabinet company, the faucet company, the appliance company. And so this is a kind of skill built into this type of photography that I've become really good at. And like I said, it's a big part of my personal business with my photos, and I'm also helping other photographers as a licensing agent. So I'd like to get other photographers kind of under my umbrella, so to speak, and, license their images. And then kind of a shoot off of that is I've created a whole course called Learn to License Your Photos that, I basically teach my tips and tactics and techniques on how I do this for myself and other people, so that other photographers can license their photos better. And so obviously I want to get, more people enrolled in the course and help more photographers earn more money through that.
Yeah. And I saw that on your website. That's obviously one of the things that we'd sort of got slated to talk about. We might as well jump in and talk about it right now as we're here. I see that you've got some teasers on your website. You've got some links to sign up and that. Tell us a little bit more about the course. And I already, just from talking with you today for this few minutes, I can tell that you'd be a great teacher, but also you've got the business sense behind that. And I see from your references on your website that you've got a bunch of people that are really enjoying working with you. Tell us a little bit about the course and what people would get. And we'll put links to this stuff in the blog post so that the listeners can get to it. And just so that before I forget, that's going to be at mbp.ac/726. So you'll be able to go and get all of the links that we talk about. But tell us a little bit more about the course, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. So the course started because, like I said, I got good at doing this part of my business. And I was in these Facebook groups where I made a post saying, I just found a contact at such and such company. I think I've gotten really good at finding contacts. Does anybody else need to know how to find contacts? Like maybe I can do a tutorial about how to find the right marketing person at a company. And it was funny because the response that I got from that post was like, wait, you're selling your photos? Like, I didn't know I could do this. Or like, wait, like, I don't need to know how to find contacts. I need to know how to do all of this. And so I was like, whoa, I guess I just thought that everybody was licensing their photos. I mean, I did it with BMX photos. I did it with fitness photos. I did it with, a landscape photo. And now I'm doing it with interior photos. And so I realized that, although it is industry standard in some respects, is that it's a common thing. Not everybody in the real estate photography or architecture photography space knew how to do this. And so I did a quick 1 hour webinar and got a lot of great response. But I realized at that point how much more there was that I could share. And, as business minded as I am, I never would have done something like this had another guy not approached me and said, hey, I know how to do the back end of creating a course. I can film and edit and produce a course. I can run Facebook ads. I can kind of be the machine that runs it if you can put your ideas and knowledge into this. And so without a good business partner, it never would have happened. His name's Jordan Powers. He's an interior photographer in the Midwest. So, a several hour flight from where I was in California. But we teamed up and, we didn't want it to be off the cuff stuff. We spent months and months researching and writing scripts. So there's more than 5 hours of recorded videos that is all scripted. So it's not, a lot of ums and uhs and, losing my train of thought. It's all very concise, planned out, thought out content over the course of more than 50 videos. And it goes from A to Z. So everything from, registering your images with the Copyright Office to why companies need your photos, how to shoot photos that might sell better, how to edit them so that you have a better chance of licensing them after the fact, copyright infringement stuff, how to find the right contact in marketing at the company you want to reach out to, sending the cold email approach, similar to the email I just talked about with you. I give all my templates. So instead of writing a new email to every company you want to reach out to, we've got copy and paste templates within the course that you can use. These are the same emails that I use to sell my photos and other photographers' photos. And in addition to the 5 hours of content, we have bonus content, which is interviews with product manufacturer that I've worked with to hear from the marketing side of a company of, what they use images for and how they source photos from people like myself. I interviewed other photographers that have different experience in the same realm of licensing their images just to get a different perspective. I interviewed a client of mine on the design and build side to get their perspective of what it was like working with somebody like myself that, shoots for them, but also licenses photos to other companies and stuff. So there's a lot in there. And then obviously we go over pricing and negotiating tactics like that to get the most out of your images. And then everything to all the way down to sending invoices and, submitting your files to the company and stuff. So it's a really all encompassing course. It's, heavy on the real estate / design and architecture images, because obviously that's the field that I work in currently. But it's all very transferable into other industries. And we talk about that as well. Like I said, I've licensed photos in the fitness and the BMX industries. I've licensed video clips. And so the course talks a lot about building up your licensing mindset. And so a licensing mindset to me is a way of thinking about your photos that allows you to go about your business, whether that be shooting, editing, marketing yourself, talking to your clients, everything that goes into your business, the licensing mindset will come into play so that you're able to look at your business and look at your images through a whole nother light and in such a way that is going to set you up to be able to sell those photos to more people and more companies that might need your photos in their marketing. And so what I'm trying to do is, again, not only show ABC, do this 1, 2, 3 step and you can sell your photo to XYZ company, but let's change the way you look at your photography so that you can, be able to sell them better. And the way I like to explain it to people is, there's this thing when you buy a new car, all of a sudden you start to see those cars on the road all the time. Or, when you're about to buy a new car and you're looking for a particular model and make of a car, you'll start to see that all over the place. And it's because your brain has filtered this information. And if you hadn't started looking for that car, they're still there. You just don't really realize them. And so once you develop this licensing mindset, all these opportunities will start to jump out at you. So you'll go into, let's say for myself, a kitchen, and you'll see, okay, this is the beautiful composition and all the details that I need to capture for the designer that hired me. But you'll also see, oh, if I do this, it shows off the faucet a little bit better. If I do this, it shows off the tile backsplash a little bit better. Then I can sell it to the faucet company. Then I can sell it to the tile backsplash company. And so again, all the main points and principles are very transferable into other industries and stuff as well.
Yeah, I generally, as I shoot, I'll do things like I'll think, okay, I prefer this in a landscape orientation, but a vertical would be better for a magazine cover and things like that, and flip the camera up and just get a few extra shots in a different orientation, things like that. I'm totally with you. I have been licensing my work. I work with an agency, and they sell it relatively good high end stuff. It's a company called Offset. And they're basically a sister company of Shutterstock, which is, Shutterstock is affordable, to be nice and politically correct.
Right.
It's an affordable sort of stock agency, and Offset is, they charge quite a lot more, but they have a what they consider to be a higher quality, the library of images that they have, and they've done some good job. I've had a few exclusive things where I've had to sell exclusivity for 5 years, but that was for a pretty large amount of money. And so it's something that even when I don't do so much now, but when I've done portraits, I make sure that the shoot itself is X amount of money. And then if the people that have the shoot done want prints, they have to buy each print obviously separately. Mm-hmm. But then there's licensing talk comes into it for any of the commercial work that I've done over the years. They pay for the shoot, and then they have to license the images as a separate thing. It's not. Yep. It's a lot of people think you pay for the shoot and then you just throw the memory card at them afterwards. Yeah. It's not how it is how it works if that's how you do it. But generally, there's more to be done there, and I think it's great that you're teaching that stuff. And I can tell from what you're saying here that it's a very powerful tool that you're providing for people. And it sounds. I was looking at I don't have it on my screen now, but it's less than $400, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, you sell one photo and it pays for itself. Like, a lot of courses are not so easy to track your ROI, but this one is seriously a no-brainer. And, we did it that way because we want to be able to help other photographers. We want it to be affordable for everybody. And like I said, literally, you sell one photo after learning from the course, and you just paid for it. So.
Yeah. If I recall, I think you'd said that you'd set up a discount for any of the users. Would people enter the word Martin and you get a discount?
That's right. Yeah. Enter Martin at checkout and you'll get 25% off the course.
Oh, well, that's very generous of you. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll make a note in the blog post.
Yeah, no problem.
So it's great that you're doing all of this, and I feel like I want to jump in and take the course myself, but I already have my agent set up, and I love the way you're doing these. You're doing little things that help you to speed along the process, like using the people you paid the money to get the list of people to contact, and all of this stuff it just helps you to become more efficient and productive, I think. And one thing, this is almost related, but not so much. You mentioned earlier copying and pasting into emails. Have you heard of an application called Text Expander?
Text Expander? No, I haven't.
I'll
write it down.
I use it like all the time, and what you do is you set it up. It sits in your system tray. You set it up and you create little templates. So, say for example, when I get someone who signs up for one of my tours, I type TWE, which is Tour Welcome Email, and it pops up a screen and says, "What have you? Who's this going to? Which tour is it, and what year?" I answer that, and then there's a checkbox for whether it's multiple participants or just one person, because the wording changes. So I answer these 4 questions, type, and I have to do it. I open up a new email and put the mouse, click the subject, because that's where it starts. But then when I've answered those 4 questions and hit enter, it creates the subject and puts the body of the email with all of the links and the person's name and the year and the tour name, and it embeds it all into the page, and it's really good for that sort of stuff. So it's got a yearly fee. I think they charge like $5 a month or something like. It's not free, but it saves me so much work. Even when I'm writing my blog post for this, later on when I embed the player and the code for that, I'll just write SPPL, which is the I think it's Smart Podcast Player or something. I forget how I did it, but I type SPPL and it says, "What episode is it?" I type in the number and it goes off and creates the headers for the blog post and that. So it's a really good way of speeding up productivity.
Yeah, thank you. I've never heard of that. I'll definitely look into it. I wrote a note here on my phone, so I appreciate that.
That's all right. So you've sent me a link to some of your beautiful work, and I'm just gonna grab that now so that we can look through at the same time. Where have I put that? I'm gonna click through these, and I will put these in the blog post. Like I say, that's going to be at mbp.ac/726. So people can come along and follow along with us. But can you tell us a little bit about each of these photos?
If I can start and go a little bit out of order, it'll help to go chronologically. And I apologize I didn't put them in order ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So the first one we'll look at is Axe body spray. So this image is of a BMX rider. Again, this is where I started my career.
Got it.
Photo was shot at X Games. I was working full time for the magazine at the time, and was shooting the X Games competition that takes place every year. It's the biggest action sports competition. Most people that have heard of BMX or skateboarding or motocross or anything have heard of X Games. So I shot this for X Games. The following year, this particular guy, Scotty Kramer, was getting a deal, an endorsement deal through Axe body spray. And so Axe was looking for an image of him to put on a poster so that he can autograph posters at X Games. So this is an instance where I shot a photo and was able to license it to Axe. But you can see in the photo, clearly, he's got the Monster Energy logo on his helmet. He's got the Fox Clothing logo on his shirt. And those are two other companies I've licensed photos to as well. But this is a good example of, when I shot a photo and licensed it to, another corporate company.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
I love the way you do that. It's just, it really is, it's one of those things that people, if you, just like you say, you see it, you're going to buy a car and you start seeing it everywhere. Just picking up on that stuff as you work is really, really cool.
Absolutely. So the next one is American Barbell. After I left the BMX industry, I started doing fitness photos. And the reason for that is because I started doing CrossFit, and a lot of people have heard of CrossFit and they hear that people get addicted to it. And I became one of those guys that talked about it constantly. So naturally, I kind of shifted my career over there as well. So this image, I was actually hired as the official event photographer for this competition. So it was very similar to the style of BMX photos I was doing, ambient light, long lens from the sidelines or whatever, occasionally getting, to go quote unquote on the field and shoot closer to the athletes and whatnot. But this was a very similar situation where I was the event photographer. I had thousands of photos of all the athletes that competed in this event. And the company American Barbell was the company that made the barbells, made the bumper plates, made the boxes you see in the background there. And so they wanted photos after the event to show that they provided the event with the equipment. And so this particular athlete wasn't sponsored by that company, but she was using the equipment in that competition. So, again, this is not the highest caliber of, high-end photography here, but it's practical everyday photography that you're able to make extra money on after you've shot it for your original client.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
All right. So the next one is Long Beach Skyline. This was the city that I lived in. Around the same time as the BMX and the fitness stuff was going on, I had a personal blog where it was kind of before, everybody was just dumping photos on Instagram every day. And I wanted a place to put my personal work on a regular basis. So just randomly one night, I rode my bike around Long Beach with a tripod and did some long exposure photos. And shot this one. I think this was like back in 2011, I want to say. Shot, 10 photos of Long Beach at night, including the one you see here, and posted them on my blog in a blog post that said Long Beach photography at night or something like that.
Yeah.
And it got a little bit of SEO traction, and people started picking up on these images. And a company reached out to me that makes custom like motor coaches, big RVs and things like that. I think tour buses for bands and whatnot, or celebrity, motor coaches. And there was an RV trade show coming up in Long Beach, and this company wanted to use a photo of the city of Long Beach as kind of a wrap on the side of one of their buses. And so I was able to, I didn't reach out to them directly, but this was a company that reached out to me, and I was able to license this photo to the company for their bus wrap. And then I've also included the Long Beach bus. Just by chance, I was actually riding my bike around Long Beach one day. I didn't know when the trade show was going to be, and I just so happened to ride past the trade show as it was happening and saw my photo on the side of the bus. So this is just an old, 2011 iPhone picture of this bus.
No, it's
but
great
you can see how they used the photo on the side of the bus.
Yeah.
And in this instance, because they reached out to me, because it was a very specific intended use, I was able to negotiate a little bit better rate than some of the photos where I reach out to them kind of as a cold pitch, because a lot of times when I reach out to a company, they don't necessarily have a direct use for it. They're not, making a catalog and need a cover photo right there, but it's a good photo and they might need it later. So they're willing to, put down a little bit of money for it. But when it's for something very specific, like a Long Beach shot at night that, is a panoramic view, they had a very specific use and timeline for it. So I was able to negotiate a little bit better price for that one.
They've probably got a budget as well. A lot of people, if you go cold calling and they don't have budget put aside for something, it's going to make it more difficult to sell. But yeah, these guys have obviously got a budget. They've got a bus that they want to paint. So yeah,
absolutely.
It looks beautiful as well. It's a great shot. It's nice to see it there.
It's funny because I'm always embarrassed to show this. It makes for the good story and it's a part of my story, but the actual skyline photo, I'm always a little embarrassed about it because I feel like it's old and a little bit outdated and, could have been done better. And I've actually shot other ones that are similar that are better now, but so I appreciate the kind words.
It's good that you feel that way. I mean, I think it's a beautiful shot and there's nothing to be embarrassed about, but I think that, your latest work should be your best. It should be the stuff that you're most proud of. And so It's good that you feel that way. It shows that you're improving.
Yeah, thank you.
What's the next one?
Photo here, the one called Fireplace.
Okay.
So this is after I started shooting interiors. I was away from real estate, but I wasn't quite where I am now as far as my skill level. But I was working for the brick and tile company that I mentioned that I was on retainer with. So in my earlier days of shooting for them, I went into this particular home and shot this fireplace. And this was kind of a pivotal moment of where it kind of springboarded me into what I'm doing now. Because after I shot this and I was in the editing process, I zoomed in and I could actually see a logo on the bottom right-hand corner of the fireplace on the glass of it.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just thought to myself, like, well, if I'm taking marketing photos for this brick company and there's a logo for this fireplace company, maybe the fireplace company could use a similar shot for their marketing.
Yeah.
So even though I had already licensed photos in BMX and in fitness and this random, Long Beach skyline photo, it still hadn't quite dawned on me yet that I could relicense photos in this industry, in this space. And so this photo is a big springboard, like I said, of making me realize like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter what industry I'm in. If you have photos, there's some kind of company out there that needs these photos in their marketing. We're living in a digital age. Instagram and Facebook and websites are how people sell things. So let me see if they need this photo. Yeah. And the fireplace company did end up licensing the photo for me. So this was kind of my intro into realizing that I could license photos from an interior space like this.
I have a photo of a young fox. That foxes have 42 teeth and every one of them's pearly white. Maybe I can license it to a dentist.
There you go. This is what I'm talking about, Mark, that licensing mindset. Yeah. Once you start to see it, all these opportunities just jump out at you and you start to think about who else can use my images. And I love that you brought that up. Like, it's obviously a little bit, silly and off the wall and maybe not serious. Yeah. But at the same time, it shows that you're starting to think about your photos a little bit differently and thinking, okay, I have all these photos sitting on my hard drive. What can I do with them to make more money? I love that.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, I mean, looking at this photo, when I brought this up, I love those. It's totally an aside, but I love those twigs on those things on the wall. They look like some of my Hokkaido landscape work, where it's just like snow and the outline of a tree. I think that's beautiful interior. Yeah. So the last one,
final photo. Yep. Yeah, final photo here. At the top of the page, or the top of your page, I should say. It's a kitchen shot. So this is a big hero shot, as we call it, in the interior space. This is showing pretty much the entire kitchen. This was shot for a build and design company that they remodeled this home in Orange County, California. And so this is more indicative of the kind of work that I do on a regular basis now. So, very detailed stuff, every bit of staging in there, the cookbook on the counter and the drink and, the flowers and the cutting boards in the background, all of those things were, pushed and pulled a couple inches here and there to try to balance the image perfectly. This was shot with a mixture of ambient frames and flash frames, all blended together in Photoshop. So this was, probably 4 to 6 frames plus, some post-production of cleaning up things after the fact. And so this was, again, shot for a design build company as my client. And then I was also able to license this to the cabinet company.
Hmm.
But you can see in here the hood on top of the stove range is, kind of a standout feature. So, there's potential to sell to the company that made that hood or did the wood on top of the hood. Even as far as the knobs on the counter or the cabinets, like the little pulls that you open the cabinets and drawers with, not this particular photo, but I have sold photos similar to this to the actual knob hardware company. The countertop company. In this particular image, you can see the veins in the countertop and see what kind of material it was made out of. There's a faucet that's pretty prominent there. There's appliances in the shot. So tile on the backsplash. So again, in an image like this, you just have a lot of options and a lot of possibilities of places that you can potentially license to.
I love the fact that you've set that last chair on just to the side, and you've got the magazine up there and the cup, because that makes it much more personable, right? It'd be too sterile without that. You give the viewer some visual clues as to, you could be sitting at this on this chair in this kitchen. Yep. It's really nice that you do that.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely by design. In order to sell a dream and a lifestyle, which is what we're doing here, and in order to sell products, you have to make the viewer imagine themselves in that space. And if they can't feel like they're actually walking into that space while looking at your image, then it's going to be a much tougher sell of whatever you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And so one of my tips to that actually, of course, I work with designers that bring props, and a lot of times the homeowners already have nice things like that in their home. But one of my personal tips is that I actually bring what I call a props kit to all of my photo shoots. So I have a big Tupperware bin that stays in my backseat every photo shoot I go to, and I have a cast iron pot and a cutting board and a cookbook and some utensils and a couple bottles of soap and a couple bottles of sparkling water and a towel. So basic things that you can bring into any kitchen or bathroom or sometimes living rooms or whatever, that you can just place in a room that might be empty otherwise, in order to liven it up a little bit. And it's come in handy more times than I can count. It's a value proposition to my clients, them knowing that I come prepared and that I'm going to be able to help with these things. So if anybody listening to this is into this kind of photography, that's something you can keep in mind as well.
Yeah. So there's one of the technical aspect that I wanted to ask about. And that's it's kind of a devil's advocate sort of thing, because sometimes it kind of bugs me, but there's a lot of architectural photos use tilt shift lenses and make sure that all of the verticals are perfectly straight. Is that something that you feel is a requirement for architectural work, or is it not?
Good question. Most people, most of the time, yes. I think there are a few instances. For instance, if you're at the top of a staircase and kind of like looking down into a room where that rule can be bent a little bit, obviously. But for the most part, yes, you're going to want to keep your vertical straight, your horizontal straight. Otherwise, it ends up kind of looking like a fun house, and you look like you're falling into the room, or the room's a little bit sideways. So yeah, I think that's pretty much a requirement. There are times when people shoot large architectural buildings. So think about multi-story buildings from the outside, skyscrapers and things like that. And I personally think that sometimes when the verticals are perfectly straight on those, it looks a little bit unnatural.
Yeah.
Because when you look up at a giant tall building, it does kind of, go in because it's so tall and perspective and everything from you being a small person looking down at it. So there might be times when you can bend those rules, no pun intended.
Well, that's good.
But I think for the most part, I think the answer is yes. Keep them straight.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because that's one of the things that gets me. You're looking up at, say, even just a 3-story building, and if the top is the same height, the same width as the bottom, and you're obviously looking up at it, it feels unnatural to me. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some images that do a better job of it than others. Maybe depending on the camera height as well, might have something to do with it. But for sure, I see some, and I'm just like, oh, I know you're sticking to the rule here, but it looks a little unnatural.
That's good. That's good to hear that's something that does come into play. Yeah. I think we've been talking for almost an hour, and I don't want to keep you for the whole day. We'll start to wrap it up, but where can people? I'll put a link to your course in the website and the voucher and stuff. Is there anywhere that you'd like to send people to get in touch with you, or is it all on that website?
You can check out my work at adamtaylorphotos.com, and my Instagram handle is just at adamtaylorphotos. And then everything for the course is just licensure photos. So licensurephotos.com. We were on Instagram at licensurephotos. And then Facebook, we have licensure photos. And actually, I forgot to mention this. As part of the course, we do have a private Facebook group for those who enroll in the course.
Okay.
And that's kind of a place where you can ask questions, you can share your experiences. We kind of help each other with any new tips or tricks or wins or successes that we find. And, you know, we really think that that's going to be a very valuable place for people to interact as part of the course. So that'll be, you know, once you join the course, you can have access to that. And yeah, just a reminder, you get 25% off for listeners. Just type in the promo code Martin at your checkout at licensurephotos.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks. Like I say, it's very generous of you. Thanks for that. And I can't believe we've been talking for, I mean, I know that I started the recording a few minutes into this, but it's almost an hour at 56 minutes, and it's gone in like 10, it feels like 10 minutes. So. Oh,
good. I hope your listeners feel the same, and I hope they get a lot out of it.
I'm sure they will. And so really, Adam, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to get a chance to chat again at some point. If you know, maybe when you're starting your fourth business or something, or you have anything new to talk about, drop me a line. We can hook up again.
Cool. That sounds great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity.
Not at all. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. As I mentioned, if you would like to go and find the links or check out Adam's photographs, and you're not listening to this on a device on which you can see the embedded photographs, head over to the blog post at mbp.ac/726. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.